Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another great episode of Free Me Podcast. Today I'm amped up. I'm sure you already know today's the day I get to interview the great Penney Peirce. For those of you who do not know who Penney Peirce is, I implore you to go to her website, which is penneypeirce.com. Just do a overview of her so you can get a general idea of her accomplishments in life and who she is. So as we get into this discussion that we have, you can truly understand what she's saying and why she's saying what she's saying. It's a very tumultuous time, so this is an episode that I feel is greatly needed for the world to hear. We talk about a lot of things that are going on in the world today and how to handle these issues within us, and just understanding that we are the creator of these issues. So we just have to reel in all of our emotions, all of our feelings, centralize them, harness them, and use them for good. And Miss Penney breaks it down in the marvelous way that she does on how to do that. So I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know the world is waiting for these words. So I do want to say, as always, thank you for all of you guys' support. For those of you listening, around the world in the countries where you're at, I hope that you're safe. Your bellies are full, as I like to say, and you can sit down and really listen to a great inspirational episode that hopefully can motivate the world to change. So I've said enough already. I know you guys are excited. I'm excited, so I'm going to get right into it. Please subscribe, like, go to my website, www.cominghomecoalition. Check me out, check what I do, and anything that you guys want to help with as far as previous guests. There are links there for a GoFundMe that you can connect with and support there. You can support me in many ways. All of that is in my site. So you can join the discussion at any time by messaging me, leaving a voice message here on anchor.fm. And we'll discuss on the show. If you have any comments about this show that you're getting ready to listen to, feel free to make and we can discuss and we can break this down, because it's all about education. So that's it. I'm going to shut up now and we can go.
Good. All set.
So I am with Mrs. Penney Peirce. This is Free Me Podcast. And wow, let me tell you, it's really amazing for me to be in front of you and speaking to you right now. I'm sure you hear that a lot.
No, not that much.
Not that much. Well, I beg to differ, but the inspiration to you, just briefly for me, I was going through a very tumultuous time in my life. I was in a very, very dark place. And I knew I wanted change. And I didn't know how to make that change, And I was looking everywhere. And it was just me one day, it was me that just decided to, I have to be honest with myself. I've been running from myself all of my life, and I knew what I was deep down. I think we all know who we really are deep down, and it was just, I was denying these things.
Well, the power of early pain in the life and the confusion that comes with, being around people who are also scared and in fear and not letting their love come through. I mean, that's a huge thing. It's not like you were running from yourself. I think it's more like we run from that experience of the contraction and fear that we knew wasn't really real or wasn't right, but there it was. And it's like we get into this kind of mental consternation. It's like, what? And it takes a while to let that settle so that the rest of you can start to show up a bit, and then you can choose that instead, and actually have a choice. Because for a long time, I think early in life, we just want to stuff that stuff down, or want to get rid of it, or deflect it, or, get mad and get rid of it, or project it onto somebody else, or, whatever. We have the ego has many ways of avoiding this,
And that's a premise of really what my show is just to educate not only myself, but others that are in the same position as me, that we are the cause of that to our children. And we teach our children these mannerisms because this is what we display and this is what we were taught, and it's just a vicious cycle that somewhere the education has to come in of self to know that I have to break this cycle somewhere, and that was exactly right with you, is that me growing up, I was taught to suppress everything. I was taught that it wasn't okay to express emotions and feelings. And that carried on into my life now to where I'm not a very empathetic person, I can be, and I can display a great amount of emotion for natural things, for life itself. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to other people's emotions, I'm not very empathetic.
Well, I think that kind of thing has to start with understanding vulnerability. That your own vulnerability. And then when you look at somebody else and you see their fear or their negative actions, and if you can feel through that and go down under the presenting conditions, and I had to learn this too, is just to see what's causing their fear. Where do they feel so vulnerable that they feel they have to protect themselves? But actually vulnerability, it's kind of a universal binding agent.
Yeah.
And I think that in a way it's like the doorway to the soul. If you allow yourself to just feel what vulnerability actually is, you go down into a level of simplicity, I want to say, in the self about, I think when I go to do it right now and I feel into that, it feels like it's a raw place. It's almost like it has a shaky vibration to it. It's very alive. It's like you're looking at a petri dish through a microscope and you're seeing all the little things in there wiggling, and it's like that's where you feel energetically, because it's very alive. And it's like energy that wants to, now I'm just feeling it right now. It's like energy that really wants to get out and flow, but something in the mind has said, no, you can't. And so it pulls it back in, but it wants out, but you pull it back in. And then you get this sort of, I guess you would call it anxiety or something. It's kind of like a out in, and it starts vibrating and it doesn't feel comfortable. So we want to try to get away from that vibratory level, because it really is a frustration place. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I want out, but my mind and all those things I've experienced tells me I'm not allowed to come out.
Well, I study a lot of nature because I know that we come from nature. And I understood at a young age that nature is the base level, the element of what life really is. What nature is life without thought. It's instinctual. And I understood that at a young age, that, that this is how we act on an instinctual level. You just become aware of the environment that you're in, whatever the environment is, depending on whatever animal you are. You're so in tune with your environment because survival depends on it, and you grow instincts on these survival instincts to this environment, and every living creature does that. because at the core essence of our body is about survival. That's the number one essence of everything, is to survive, you know. And what separates us humans from that is thought. And it's just like you say, we have this instinctual carnal rage to produce in life, but thought comes in and interjects on that, and then you start doubting yourself because of these experiences that you've had from the mental aspect of it, that has, you know, and this is why I'm bringing you in today to explain how we overcome that. You know, how when I'm in the position that I'm in today, like, what's going on in my life in this moment is so chaotic, you know, and I'm sitting down here with you having this interview, and it's like, how do I resonate a high amount of vibrations to remain in a state of producing positivity?
Well, I kind of get the feeling that, you know, if we just suspend a lot of the monitoring thoughts, you know, that's the left brain. Left brain is always making rules and locking things down with definitions and meanings, and then belief systems and, you know, explanations of life that we think this is the way it is, you know, and then that becomes like almost a blockage, because anything that gets locked down and defined too much, energy can't flow through. So I think that as soon as you suspend holding those or adhering to those or identifying with those kinds of thoughts and just be, what will happen is you shift out of your left brain into the right brain, which is the opening to all that is. It's really that kind of knowing. It's direct knowing of the unified field, of the imaginal realm, of everything. It's all there at once. And it's hard to have a sense of what you know, because that would take it back into the left brain to categorize it. So you have a direct experience of becoming one with all knowledge, or one with, like you said, nature. It's a perfect way to start to learn this, because when you go out in nature, you can start to feel that you have a field of energy that's connected with the field of energy of the tree and of the squirrel and the birds, and that there's this one big reality that we're all flowing in, you know, and one thing causes another thing to move. The wind causes the leaves to move, and like everything's connected. And if you stay and commune with that, you know, you start to get very, very close to spiritual truth, right? But I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think that
no, you're beautiful. Please continue.
But it's the culprit is the left brain part, and we call that the mind. But really, the mind is so much bigger. It includes both analytical and intuitive knowing, or, you know, and the right brain is our intuitive self, and the body and the right brain are very connected, and the body and the right brain and the heart are very connected. And then that's connected with the field of energy around you. And that energy is conscious. When you start meditating and you go in and you start to feel energy, you know, if you raise your energy, you also raise your consciousness. Mm-hmm. And when you lower energy, it doesn't mean, or raise energy, it doesn't mean you have to go fast. It's more like smooth, you know, like peace, or a sense of love and communion. And then it gets very refined and very pure. That's high frequency energy, where everything just permeates everything, and you have that direct knowing of things. And but when you try too hard, it actually makes you more frenetic, and then your energy goes down, and you go into fear. So anytime we are operating from fear, the frequency of the body and the consciousness and the emotions and everything is lower. And then your reality matches that. Right. And you start to get similar stuff happening to you, because, and here's another spiritual principle, I guess, is that there is no outside world. You know, this is sort of a thing that I think a lot of us are starting to grapple with is that, if I meditate and I feel into my body, and then I can feel that energy going out through my skin, and then it's around me in my aura, and then it goes further and further out. Like, where do I end? I don't. If I can keep including and including and including and including more of life into my ball, I could be the universe if I would get quiet long enough to expand. Or I can shrink down and be a person sitting here talking, right? And we do that all the time, especially at night. We dream, we go out and zoom out, with the zoom lens, we open up. So I guess what I started saying was that if you can suspend those finite, fixed ideas from the left brain, your explanation to yourself, and just be, it opens you up to this bigger reality, which is the spiritual, non-physical realms of energy and consciousness. They always say, we think we have a soul, but really the spirit has a body. It's, we are the soul. We're not just a brain. We're not just a body. We're so connected to great amounts of wisdom and love and abundance, and it's all there. And that's what we are. That's what we live in all the time as souls. And we're just trying, I think, to match that experience with the physical experience. We're trying to see that spirit is also inside matter. It's in our body. It's in our cells. It's underneath form. It gives rise to form,
So to touch on that a little bit, because I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on what the soul and spirit is. Some think that it's the same, some, and I agree with you. There's it's two different parts that work together that coincide to make one.
Right. It's like spirit to me, anyway. I mean, everybody has their understanding, but to me, spirit is a realm of consciousness, higher dimensions, or whatever you want to call it, where it's like time and space dissolves, and there's just this one space, one experience, and it is governed by a sense of belonging and mutual inclusion. Like, I include you and you include me, and we include the trees and the trees include us, and everything is part of each other, and that is, you have to really expand your mind to start to try to feel it,
What resonated with me, like when I came in contact with your book, right? I had already seen The Secret. The Secret is what opened my mind to exactly what it is that you're talking about. When I watched The Secret, and I had to be drugged to watch this, like I didn't even want to go watch this, but life as it made it happen for me to go watch this, forced me to go watch this show. So after that, it put everything together for me that has been happening all my life that I could not explain, that I just wrote off as circumstance, and when that happened, things just started coming to me, just manifesting to me, like, here's a book that you need to read. It would just be in front of me, and my eyes would go to it, and I would be instantly drawn to this book. And this is how I came across Frequency. I never heard of the book, didn't know who you were, knew nothing about this. I just knew when I saw it, it was the cover, and the title, Frequency, right? And then I read The Power of Personal Vibration. Now, the reason why that drew to me, because as a people watcher, I started noticing that we are projectors. This is how I've always described it. We are like an 8mm camera, and our film that is inside of us projects around us. So if our film is a negative film, let's just say, we're going to project negativity around us in everything that we do, how we address our home. It'll be a dark home, clutter, messy, untidy, just things of that nature. But But when you're projecting positivity, right?
Yeah.
Everything around you, your curtains are open, there's light in the house, it's clean, it's, your feng
That's
shui,
right. Yeah.
or whatever. And then what I started noticing is that when you're down, you're slow. You don't have any energy.
Right.
You can't, you don't want to, you're lethargic. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to shave. You don't want to, and the deeper down you go, the less energy you have.
Right.
But yet on the flip side, the more positive you are, you're bouncing off the walls.
Yeah. Or you're very focused and channeled into some creative flow, which is usually what happens. I think the more your frequency rises and you do get clear, really, you're not so attuning yourself to fear anymore, basically, and I think you're looking at your engagement with the moment, with like any moment that you're in, you don't protest about it. You're like, well, this is information, it's data, so there's something interesting here. And that's a positive attitude, because like, what am I trying to tell myself? Oh, this is interesting. Let me see what's going on. And I always call it, you're noticing what you notice. Mm-hmm. By becoming conscious, you have this function within our own consciousness that helps us notice things, like you with the book, or whatever. Suddenly you got clear. Now you're noticing things are showing up. Yes, they're showing up and you're noticing them. And that's so important, because we are coordinating ourselves with what occurs in our field, and
as the wind does with leaves.
Yeah. And so I think that part of this higher frequency is clarity. And then there's a sense of engaging with the moment, which also causes you then to be very fascinated with creativity. Mm. And I think that's why we even come to Earth anyway, as spirit souls, to engage in this experiment of time, space, and matter. And how do you create an idea turning into form? Woo, or how do you dematerialize a form back into energy through your mind, through attention, and this is so cool. But we get stuck in feeling separate in this world. And then we get fear, and then we get blocked. So we have to reverse that and stop feeling so separate. Then I think that happens by not having an outside world. I keep saying that, but we always think of, here's me, I'm my body, and outside of me is all this stuff I see out there, and it's so big, the world is so big and so powerful and evil and bad, and it can hurt me, and I have to defend myself against it, put up shields, whatever people do. I try to make it work and use control and domination, or else I'll just be a victim and not do anything. And these are behaviors that come from the very belief that we have an outside world, like a line around ourselves. That's the core separation that we unconsciously believe in. If you take that line away, no boundaries, then your consciousness starts to expand out beyond the little line where you drew it, and that was your world that you were allowing to be. If you take the line away, wow, yeah, it's a big world out there. There's all kinds of fun stuff to do. And look, I could be like this, and I could have this knowledge, and I could create this. And I understand these people because now they're part of me. They're not over there as enemies polarized against me. I must have had some of that in me too at some point. I understand it. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you start having that, what we started talking about originally was understanding vulnerability. And once you do that, then you understand that everybody is a soul, and they are connected at a love level where they have not lost any knowledge. They are all wise. I don't really think souls have to evolve. I think the mind has to evolve back to the home place, that souls are fine. They're already evolving all together as a one group. But as I said before, spirit is the realm that souls exist in. Wow. It's the environment, right?
So I guess like what resonated, and I'm on everything that you're saying. And I guess what resonated with me, like what gave me that connection again, was Hollywood. And it was the movie Avatar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And when
Right.
I watched Avatar, and I understood that how he was connected to everything in his environment, and everything understood one another, and they communicated with one another.
Exactly.
And it all had just a universal love and respect for each other, because everything knew its place, you know.
Yes.
And to me, I always say, like, this is how life is supposed to be, in my theory.
Right. It's how it actually is in the non-physical realms. It's how it actually is.
And I can understand that. And my theory of life is that, like, this plane of existence. And again, I've this theory of my life came from your knowledge and sharing with me, through this book, is that this plane of existence, this physical plane, is where, the souls, now as you as educated, because I used to say the spirit, but now the soul comes here to experience love in a physical form.
Right.
Because this is the only plane of existence that the soul can come and use the five senses that were gifted to us.
Right.
To experience the physicality of what love really is, because we gain the knowledge from that.
Yes. Yes. And, if the more you open to the spiritual reality, the internal reality, the non-physical part of ourselves, the more you realize that you just are love, that you're made out of it, and you don't really need any more. You don't need to, you just want to play in it. That we have plenty, I don't need to get any, but I would love to share it and play with other people in it, and when you see then people who feel like they don't have any love, it's like the biggest lie, like, oh, please wake up, let's play, please stop holding yourself in that place where you feel unloved and unlovable and mean, and, take on the negative self-image, like it's such a lie, and I don't know, I guess that's probably what the angels think about us. It's like, okay, people, come on, let's get with it. Let's get with the program, but
that's a great segue into kind of what the discussion is going to evolve around. Is that that's exactly it. I mean, when we're coming up, first off, do you think that people are just born evil, or it's just environmental that makes us kill at 8 years old, 9 years old, our parents, or eat people, or just
great
pedophilia.
Question.
These
right. No, I think it's always you have to understand there's always an inner energy blueprint for anything in the physical world. Like we said, spirit or souls have bodies don't have souls, right? We coalesce our body out of an inner energy blueprint pattern that is made up of old beliefs and emotional wounds and enlightenments that we've had in the past and so forth. It's some mixture of love and fear that allows us to create the body that we have and the personality that we have. It's a pattern that causes our physical body to be shaped and even our motives and desires to be what they are. They come from that pattern. Well, that pattern comes from a collection of previous lifetimes of, well, you were wounded, you got murdered, you had some awful, terrible thing happen to you that you contracted and froze up and you never exhaled again. And so there's a holding pattern in the inner energy blueprint that is about fear and then vengeance, perhaps, or like, what am I going to do to not have to feel that fear? Well, I'm going to attack other people and then they'll see what it's like revenge, and and that kind of thing comes up as a response to the avoidance of feeling fear. Right? That's the key thing. The avoidance of feeling fear creates all these methodologies that we come up with that gets us, in a life of crime and put in jail and, and negative self-worth and all that. So children, souls are born, and even at a very young age, if they've had a huge amount of fear and violence and whatever in their previous lives, that will be the pattern of their energy body. And then that starts showing up in the mind as thoughts immediately. And that will trigger those kind of behaviors because they are not really connected. They're disconnected through the amount of fear that they have had. They're disconnected from the spiritual realm.
So let's break this down now for my average listener so they can understand exactly what that means, because we're talking about reincarnation and right. Souls, traveling through. So how can past lives, right, past traumas carry on into a whole nother human being?
Right. Well, first of all, I have to say, I absolutely do believe in past lives and other lives, even parallel lives. I think it's all my experience shows me that that is absolutely true. And I have found out a number of my own past lives. And for instance, in my last life as a woman, I died of tuberculosis, like age 50. And I was born in this life with severe lung problems. It took me until I was like 14 or 15 to grow out of having chronic bronchitis and pneumonia constantly as a child. So yeah, lung stuff killed me in the previous life, but it was like a residue in the emotional body. And it came back in and I worked through it, but it's at a much lesser level that I could actually clear it. Right. And that's partly what we do. That's karma, and that is the healing of those their wounds, but really their misunderstandings of the way natural laws actually work and how loving and beneficial they are. When you miss the mark, quote, you sin. That means you just misunderstood something. You didn't get the whole picture and you got stuck in a partial understanding of how life works. And then that's ignorance, right? And so if you have had, like for instance, let's say in a past life, you're a monk and you're doing all this spiritual work and you get invaded by warring forces, which often did go into monasteries and kill all the monks. That was part of what happened in the world, And then you say, well, look, I was serving God. What's the matter? And then that part of the mind does this, right? Especially as the looming death comes in, you're going, this is not right.
Right.
Protest. And then you carry that with you over into the non-physical realm as you die, and then you're stuck with it. You have to come back in again. You get clear your karma only in the physical world. It doesn't clear in the non-physical.
Why?
I don't know, but it needs a physical flowing in order to work itself out and be cleared out of the energy body, the emotional body.
So sort of through a conscious cleansing.
Yes, exactly. Conscious cleansing. Yeah. And so let's say you had that happen, then you come back in for another lifetime and that unfairness is still there. And then you start to use that unfairness thought to, think, well, I deserve more. I shouldn't have had this happen to me. So I'm going to rob a bank or whatever, and so then you exacerbate or complicate the original wound and misunderstanding by doing something else that adds to it, but in another way. And then that builds, and then that gets so strong that then it, gets you really messed up, and then you become the murderer. All right. Well, hopefully at some point, the people who killed you and you who killed someone else will get it, that it's not a good thing to do, even though the soul doesn't care because it's eternal. It comes and goes. but the contractions of the wounds stay until you get the understanding. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is just something that
Enlightenment is
happened.
the key.
Yeah, right. I get it. And it's like with you, there's a certain point for everybody where it just dawns, literally, light dawns on us. Oh, I create my reality. Yeah, I can feel good if I want to. I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to relate to all that past stuff. I can let it go. And instead, I can feel my home frequency, like the way I like to feel my preferred state. I want to feel good. And nobody can make me feel bad unless I let them. And that's where you take responsibility really for your life. And then you, like you said, you just start noticing things you need start showing up. People say something, you hear it, you hear a song lyric, you see a movie, and you go, aha, and these things start rolling in. And it's almost like we start remembering. Oh, right, this is how it works. That was not how it works. This is how it works. And then you validate that, and then you see it demonstrated, and then it builds up more clarity in your inner energy blueprint or your emotional body, right? And then you're dissolving out the fears and the old resentments or frustrations. And you're saying, that's old. That wasn't even my idea. That was my mother's idea that I inherited or whatever, my dad's pattern. I don't have to have that. And you will start on a path of clearing yourself of these things that really are in the way of you feeling the way you want to feel. And it takes years, because I've been in it for a long time, of getting through these places where I am caught in misperceptions. I hope that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
it makes.
I know it's funny. I'm talking kind of abstractly with you today. I don't usually do that, but you were drawing this out of me. So
Well, and I love that, and maybe that's my forte, I guess. I just always have noticed life around me, and I've always noticed one thing about me. And again, this was one of the key things that I could hold on to in my moment of despair, when I was looking for something good about me and I had nothing good to say. It came down to just one thing, and I just care about humanity and I care about life, and I want to produce good. That was my building foundation. After I tore myself down, that was my slab, and I knew that that's what it was.
Yeah.
And from that point, I just started noticing, that even the most ostracized society that I was around in those moments, and these human beings knew that they were ostracized and they had no hope in life. There was still, at the end of the day, a instinctual to be just a good human being.
Right.
And that taught me that, like, we're not evil. I don't believe that we're just born evil.
No.
We have a lot of issues and a lot of emotions that we don't know how to deal with because we were just never taught. And how you explained about the soul coming in with prior issues, I mean, for me, I don't know about my listeners, but that just opened up a whole new level of understanding for me.
Yeah.
And so what happens if you have a soul who is just a snowball going down a hill, just a reckless snowball, because like you say, the soul doesn't care. It's eternal. So it's just a reckless snowball that's just out of control downhill. And then what would that produce?
Well, let me back up just a minute, because
Sure.
to give you another little model here, because the soul is it's not a thing so much as it is a consciousness. And when it comes into the physical world, it's really dropping its frequency. It's like slowing itself down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, to be able to crystallize itself in the physical world as a personality and a body, right? Okay. But in order, through those slowing down levels, you go through first like into the mental realm. And in that realm, that's where the wounds are stuck. You know, these slower levels are the collecting levels of either the positive or the negative experiences that we've all had over time. So there's some ideas in the mental realm that are really negative and frustrating and I guess we would call it evil, because the lack of love is just evil. You know, it's great levels of fear, but also it's light. It's places where you've had insight, you've had enlightenment, you've had initiations maybe in past lives, or you've had clarity that comes to you. That's all there too. Sometimes I think about it like a sieve, like those colanders that there are holes in them, and then there's solid places. Where the holes are is where you have love and light, and you have clarity and insight, and that's where the soul pours through. The dark places are where you've had fear and, negative experiences, and that blocks the light. All right. So the light comes through, let's say, the mental realm, and it goes into the next level, which might be the emotional realm. And there you have locked in experiences too. Fear places. I'm never going to go over and down that dark alley, or, I'm never going to get married again because look what happened last time. And those things are also light and dark places. So the light filters through again, maybe a little less gets through. And then it comes through into the etheric body, which is the blueprint for the physical. And it clumps in areas where the dark part is and the energy doesn't get through. Well, that might create tumors in your body, or an illness or disease, or a tendency toward paralysis or something, So the more you clear in the physical world, the fear places, it creates light. That light goes back up through the other bodies and it allows more of the soul to come all the way through. That's the process we're in. All right. And so a soul isn't like a snowball rolling in. It is gentle and it is insistent, and it comes through because it has a love of this world and of other beings and of the whole experiment of being in the three-dimensional realm and having matter and the whole deal here. And it wants to create and it wants to play in the love. That's the soul's motive. But by the time it gets watered down and gets into actual form, there's a constellation of light and dark that comes along with it. Now, some of that darkness could be, like you're saying, something that's going gung-ho toward a goal, or it can be a zealous person, like a religious zealot, like you must have God only this way, or the conspiracy theory people, are saying, well, this is bad and look at what's happening. People are eating children in Hollywood and stuff like that. It's there are just so many patterns of ignorance, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't blame anybody. But everyone has their own moment where it can dawn on you, like you had, like I had, where like, oh, wait, I can change this.
Right. And that's where I'm at now. Like I'm at a point now, Miss Penny, that no matter what I see anybody doing, it's like I understand because at the end of the day, I understand that you are just trying to survive with the tools that you were given to survive with.
Right.
And there's just levels of egoism that that we go through, and it's just now I'm at a stage to where I feel love for this person, and I want to reach out and I want to help this person.
Right.
And then this person usually just tells me to F off and slaps me, or no, I'm just kidding.
Right. But you know what? Whenever you have a real moment with someone where there is love, and even if it's telepathic, even if it's not all verbalized, that real moment is something that is about a spiritual truth, and it connects soul to soul. Those are like little candles that get lit and they never go out again. It's so important, I think, to practice having real moments with people, especially with children, because they get it immediately and they recognize, oh, that person understands me, right? It's so important because then they have something to cling to remember what truth is. You know, they have to have an example of love in action, in form, and then they can always refer back to that moment and then build on it. You know, so I think that's so important. And what am I thinking here? There are moments then where when you start to question, I think that's another important thing, is you're questioning how the reality works this way and if it's really right or not. And that could be the beginning of waking up. You know, that can be the beginning of starting to realize that, oh, it can be different. So it's so important to question things, I think, you know.
Well, I think that's where we're at today, is there's not enough questioning going on, you know, I learned, and I'm still learning, that you said it perfectly, that once you get to the point to where you're starting to question, that means that there's doubt about what it is that you're involved in.
Right.
You know, but as soon as we sit here and we say, to me, the most detrimental words that we could say to ourselves, which is, I know, you automatically shut yourself down from any further education coming in, because you automatically, as soon as education comes to you, you automatically say, I know, and you just shut down from it.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting, because I have a friend who is fairly awakened, but when I ask her something, so I don't know, which I think is another block, right? It's like, if you think you know too much or you don't know anything, what? But in this moment, my sense of things is this, and in the next moment, it could change. You know, knowledge is evolving. You know, nothing stays static, right? But I think people who are really in fear, especially and only in the physical realm, and who only think about survival of the physical life, getting enough money to pay the rent and feed the children, of course that's important. But if you only live in that realm, then it limits you to the methods for changing that. You know, then you look like you have to use willpower and cleverness or dishonesty or whatever it is to change your circumstances. But if you start to realize there's a non-physical world, an inner energy blueprint, and you can change that inner energy blueprint, and then your physical reality will just change like that. It just drops in a different way, and suddenly circumstances change. It's effortless, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much more fun. But we have to get these people to understand that there is a non-physical reality that is causing their physical reality.
And I use your example, and I used it in a prior episode, and it's your example is to me, it's you can't argue against it. And again, that's the tuning fork, right?
Right.
So when you take a tuning fork, because this is what we're talking about vibrations, right? And when you take a tuning fork and you flick it at the fastest point of that vibration, it's invisible. You don't see it. You can't see it.
True.
It's only on point A and point B where it starts the pendulum starts to slow down. Does it start to become visible to your eyes? And this is what you explain when it comes to vibrations, is that the higher your vibration, you become naked to the eye, just because our minds can't conceptualize a vibration that high.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in spirits, then you don't believe in the tuning fork. I mean, that's just how I look at it, you know?
Yeah. And I think we all have, like, you know, our home frequency. To me, that's the vibration of our soul in our personality body. And when you're in that state, it's a state of being. You feel so good and so comfortable and right in tune with life, and whatever comes to mind, you trust it and you act on it, and it goes easily. You know, it's great. But that is a tone, actually, too. And you can imagine in your mind that you have a tuning fork that is of that tone. And then you strike it, ding, you know, and it runs through your body and all the cells, and then in the air and all around you in the field of energy. And you're aligning your tone with your reality and letting your reality actually then arise out of that tone. It's a simple way to center yourself, you know, and you can always change the frequency of your home frequency, you know, and raise it up a little, more and more, because we do evolve and we do understand more and more all the time.
So getting into this now, for those that don't know who you are, don't know what home frequency is, vibrations are. So let's break down a little bit now. What is home frequency? How do you stay in your home frequency? Mm-hmm. And then just share a little bit of who you are and how you got into this vibrational world.
Well, yeah. Well, like I just said, the home frequency, like we all have our own vibration. Everything has a vibration, you know, trees and insects, everything. But because of the way the world works, and we're so oriented toward the outside world and survival, what happens often is that when you go around during your day and you meet other people, or you enter different kinds of spaces, even, you might enter a room that has fluorescent lights, and then you go, ooh, something in you contracts and you don't feel so good. You go into a room with really pretty low lighting and good ambiance, and you go, really nice. Or you meet a person who's a victim and really negative. And we have an unconscious tendency to frequency match other people and other places because it's tribal. You know, we have to keep our tribe's vibration together in order to survive. And so if I match the frequencies with another person, maybe they won't attack me. You know, so we do that. But the problem is you might be in a good mood and you get around somebody who's complaining and really negative, and you go down and you match them, and then you leave and you feel awful. And it doesn't occur to you that, oh, I just matched somebody else's vibration that is not me. It's making me sacrifice myself to be less than I am. So, but we do it all the time anyway. I mean, that's when we go into the world. But we are not those other vibrations. Those are just things we do. We are our home frequency, which is the vibration of our soul. And that is a combination of our amount of love and fear that we can relate to now. So we get rid of the fear, our frequency goes up, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so the idea here is to constantly recenter into the home frequency and say, this is who I am. I am not all those other people, high, low. I don't have to be like them. I'm me. And I'm safe and I'm calm and I enjoy my own energy. And as you enjoy it, you get more of it, you know? So that's your home frequency. And it's an idea about really being centered and identifying properly with who you actually are, not with all the stuff around you. Okay, so that's that. And how I got going, it's been a progression, I'd say, of reading a lot of books as a kid on mysteries and spiritual stuff and psychic development and all that kind of thing, and psychology. And then I became a designer, first interior and architectural design, and then graphic design. And I was a corporate art director for a while. And that kind of thing is interesting because it's very artistic, but you're designing like logos for people where you have to feel, well, what does their company do, or what are they all about, and what typeface would reflect that quality, what symbol would exemplify that thing. And it's very intuitive, and so I did that for a while. I think I trained myself in intuition development, and then I found myself in an area of California where all this kind of consciousness stuff was happening. And I took classes in clairvoyance development, which I didn't even know you could do. It's like didn't exist. And then I was really good at it. And once I started doing that, that took over. It was like nothing else was interesting anymore. And I talk about the snowball or whatever, it's like I just knew I was finally on track, and I had gotten myself ready for this. And I started inhaling knowledge of esoteric things and everything, nutrition, everything you could think of, and doing readings and teaching classes, and it was all on basically intuition development. And that was the early part of my work. And then I wrote the first book, The Intuitive Way, which is a course on intuition development, and that got me going into writing. And now there are 10 books, and but then I worked in Japan on and off for like 20 years, which is like an amazing experience of understanding a different way of organizing reality where everything's connected. You don't insult anyone or have them lose face, because then everyone feels it, because they're not separated. There's a different kind of ethics.
That's the Japanese way of life.
Yes, right? Or Asian, yeah. It's very different.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you go into detail a little bit of what that means and how a way of life like that is for those that has no idea over here?
Yeah. Well, there it is. Like I said, it's a very emotionally interconnected and energetically interconnected, and they are highly sensitive to energy. And so there is a kind of morality there that you sort of take care of the other person in a way, and don't shame them, because if they get shamed, then you do too, and so do as everybody else that's around them, because they can all feel it. So, and also you don't stand out. Like they have the thing, the nail that stands out gets pounded down. It's like
the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Right. No, it's the opposite of our reality. And so, like when they're making decisions, for instance, we'd come out of a workshop and we're going to go to dinner. Where do you want to go to dinner, Penny? And I say, well, how about this? And okay. And then everybody would orient toward me because I spoke out, and that individuality actually is not good there, because it didn't let them have a say in where they'd like to go, because they adhere to the one that speaks out. So I learned how to be quiet and say, well, what do we all think? And then somehow magically, telepathically, we would all head off down the street and go to this one kind of restaurant. And I was like, I never quite understood how it happened, but it was like a group mind worked and did it, and you don't try to be dominating there, or else it's bad for your reputation. The kindness comes from honoring others. So, but then they don't have a sense of individuality as strongly as we do. So the young people there are starting to go into that a little more and be colorful in the way they express themselves. So, and we are learning to do group work, and, so I think the East and West cultures are starting to integrate a little bit of each other's way of being.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think individualism is a bad thing?
No, but I think if you only have that, it's a limitation. And if you only have group mind, it's a limitation. I am an individual and I am a group. I'm part of a group mind, which is my soul group, maybe, and you need to understand there's a bigger experience of yourself when you merge with a group. But then you're always still an individual at the same time.
And I think that is big thing that's going on in the world today is group mentality. There's way too much
Right.
group mentality and not enough individualism. And I think that our individualism is really um, is in detriment, because I think it's being taken away from us without us even realizing. As you say, we're being taken away out of our home frequency, and we don't even realize that we don't even realize that we have a home frequency.
Yeah, but that's giving power to the outside world again, you see. Nobody's taking it away from us.
But that's the perception
I
that
know, and that's the ignorance again. Nobody can take away you from you.
hmm.
It's impossible. It can take away your attention from paying attention to yourself.
But when this outside world is touching you emotionally, when the police are coming to your house and taking away your only child, and you understand the circumstances of what happened, and but yet the hands of the law come in and they're unforgiving, and they take your child and they give your child 20 years. How do you not let that outside world affect you?
Well, this is the hard part, because I'm just trying to say how to say this. We have a large level of ignorance of spiritual reality in our current world on the earth, and part of that ignorance is that we think there's this big outside world that is so powerful and bad, and it can do things to us and keep us from having love and being ourselves. And when you have that unconscious idea that like a bigger force out there can do something to you. This is why COVID is now, such a big thing around the world. It's a global thought form taking shape. But also, victimization and violence and things you're describing that people do experience comes from a very large unconscious thought form that we all kind of are in a bit, and it's unconscious, all right? It's deep. And ingrained. And it takes work to wake up out of that and to start to change it. But when you have that thought form, your reality patterns itself according to that thought form. And then you get police coming in and taking away your child, or you get all kinds of violence and victimization and depression and addiction and all that stuff that goes with that level of, I keep calling it ignorance, but it's lack of understanding of higher truth.
Mm-hmm.
And religion doesn't quite get you there, in my opinion. It's too much dogma, and it's too many priests who are in positions where they have power, and it's not pure. It can get you partway there, but you have to almost become mystical in order to have a direct connection with nature and the universe and the divine and spirit, in order for that to educate you. And so we need all the spiritual teachers we can get right now in the world, all the people talking about this as much as possible. And what I've been trying to do through books and so forth is to write a series of guidebooks that are like a roadmap to how do you get out of these old entanglements, and again, it's no blame, because if I say to somebody, well, you're just caught in a bad thought form, they're going to say, well, forget you. And because I'm not loving them, but I am. I understand it all. And I am caught in them too, in different things. We all are. But I just keep reinforcing, like what you're saying is that you got it at a certain point. You started questioning and waking up and watching and seeing and noticing and letting your memory come back in. We all have positive memory of spiritual truth. We all know deep down what we want is happiness, and we want a healthy family. We want our children to be happy and grow up to be better than we were, and all of that. That's the spiritual realm affecting us.
And that's like, as you say, and as I started, I'm sitting here and I'm interviewing you, and my reality around me, my world is very, very heavy, and I'm the type where I just try to remain in a positive, like I keep saying, everything is going to be okay. And I say that with the faith that I have, because I know no matter what's going on around us, as long as we're breathing, we can always make a change, and good will come. So I always have that carnal instinct, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's hard because not everybody is that strong, and we're so, as human beings, we're so attached to these material things that when we lose them, no matter what it is, or even we live in fear of losing them,
Mm-hmm.
that it destroys and consumes so much of our time and our energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love what you said about the home frequency, and remaining in that home frequency, because as this person that just got this 20-year sentence and is on his way into a very, as you would call it, low frequency, negative environment, is not to adapt to that environment.
Right. Here's maybe a thing that might help. It's like I lived in San Francisco for a long time, and LA, and the consciousness is pretty spiritual out there. It was easy to be spiritual. Then my mother got sick and I moved to Florida to help her. And the consciousness around here is pretty conservative. And I would say conservative is a nice word. But I was thinking I have to be really careful here about what I say, or I could get in trouble, because I just sound like I'm a Looney Tunes compared to the way the belief systems that are surrounding me here. And my inner voice said to me, don't hide, let yourself be exposed. And people who can see you will see you, and people who can't see you won't even see you. But be a clear space in the field of Florida. And I got the image of like, hold your home frequency, clear your body, clear your personality, be as often as you can in that positive space. And then it's like a burning off fog. You expand that diamond light out through the space around you. And maybe the clear space in my field of Florida is, like 5 feet across or something,
Right.
And then I just keep saturating and allowing it to go farther and farther. And it's not like I'm trying to convert anybody or tell anybody anything. Just be pure, simple, and be a clear space. And you get to live in that space then. No matter where you are, you can be spiritual anywhere. In jail, you can be a loving being among angry people.
And that's what started changing the way that I was looking at things in my environment. Was all I'm seeing is a stigma. What my eyes is registering and what my brain is registering is a stigma of what I'm told I'm supposed to see. That doesn't mean that that's what it is. And I started asking myself, what is the difference of me being where I'm at and an individual paying thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to some distant monastery for however many years and just seclude himself away from society? What is the difference of that, other than what people are telling me what the difference is? But when it comes to the mental state, like you say, the spiritual state, how is there any difference? And that's what really started me to just self-reflect on myself and like you say, just be the change, or Bruce Lee says, just be water, just be like water.
Right. Yeah.
Just be form-fitting to your environment, and just let things come in as they are, and understand that these are the reasons why they're happening, because of our vibrations that we're putting out into the world.
Yeah. And if you think negative thoughts, you create waves in that water. which then create events that are upsetting. But the clear space, if I just think of a totally clear diamond light space in the middle of a fog. And then it gets bigger and bigger. And now more people could get interested in what that feels like. And then they'll kind of come and find you, So you don't have to be in a cave to do this, right? But also what's interesting about spiritual energy is that it is not in time and space. It's not limited to traveling in a line somewhere. It doesn't take any time to travel. So when you're in that space yourself, it communicates to other people instantaneously. It gets right into their mind. And you don't even know you sent it or whatever. It's just, it increases the amount of that kind of energy on the planet. That's why monks in caves actually can be in caves, because they can meditate there and affect the world. But you can too. Anybody can.
Have you ever heard of Baird T. Spalding?
No.
Baird T. Spalding was an archaeologist back in the late 1800s, and he went on an expedition to go live. He got invited to go live with some monks for 3 years, and he was allowed to document his experience. It's a 6-book series called Life in the Times with the Masters of the Far East.
Okay.
And he starts the book off like, listen, what I'm going to say is, some crazy stuff, but these are my experiences, and you could just take it for what it is. And he was describing, at first he was welcomed by the monks and it was everyday life. But as life started to progress, he started to see the capabilities of what meditation and what these monks were able to do. And some of his experiences ranged from the way that monks would appear. So how he explained it one time was, they were at the bottom of the mountain and they had to hike up to the mountain, and they were asking the monks, like, how are you coming with us? And the monks are like, no, we'll meet you there. This was a 3-day hike. It was the only path up the mountain that they knew of. And yet the monks were already there, and they look like they've been there for days, and so it's these occurrences that they explain, and it's when we hear these things, and like I touched with you briefly on Ramtha, when we hear these things, it's so fantastical to us that it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And yet for me, I look at life in a timeline of the people that have been here and the messages that they have left behind, such as Socrates, Buddha, Jesus, this figure Ramtha, whether he is real or not, just there's been so many messages of just be yourself, be your light, be your light, and resonate what you want to resonate.
Right. I think a lot of those teachings that came earlier, people didn't know how to do that. It sounded kind of like abstract and like, what? But now we're trying, that's what I've been trying to do, is to give people actual methodologies like the home frequency and how to get into it and how to remember to get back to it. And then you can stabilize from the center out. But I think that it's really the same teachings that have just been coming in over and over and over again, rejiggered for new ages and consciousness and levels of knowledge. Nothing's too complicated, really, but it's just that so many people only identify with what they see from their physical eyes to the physical world, and they don't get that there's the invisible reality that's inside the physical reality. The energy and consciousness world is inside the physical world. And we live in both. But, I remember when I was opening up and I was I was working in an office, in a company, and I would talk to secretaries or whatever about astrology or, or psychic phenomenon. And they all had a story. Oh, I saw my dead grandmother standing at the foot of my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not weird. Everybody's had something,
But the thing of that right there, what you said is that lady may have never told anybody that,
right?
But you, because you opened the door for her to feel comfortable enough to express something.
That's right.
She may have been holding her whole life.
And she maybe wanted to understand more about it, too. So we would talk about it, But I think that with everything accelerating the way it is now, things that used to be supernatural, like you were saying, are much more normal. They're starting to be seen as normal. Like I'm seeing a lot more. Things are in the present moment now. They're not in the future. The future is a potential reality, a higher frequency of our present moment. It's not over there somewhere. It's right here in your world with you, but you just change your frequency and you can go into it and you'll have it. It's not like a linear process anymore. Okay, but so that is a very strong acceleration. You think of something, put attention on it, and it can materialize quite quickly. So I have seen quite a bit now of instantaneous healing with healers I know. And they're like, wow, I just did this and they got over it. It's like it went away. It's starting to happen. Just like you can have instantaneous negative results too. You think a bad thing and, oh man,
Well, I'm a firm believer that chaos brings consciousness. It brought consciousness to my life.
It's the next phase after chaos.
And can we be in more of a chaotic time than what we're in right now in the present?
Yeah.
So this is where my faith comes in at, and like I explain to people, faith is something that's became so cliche that now when you tell somebody to have faith, it doesn't even resonate with them anymore.
It's like one of those words like love. That's like, it's like, it's non-tactile.
You've been tarnished by it so much.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like when I put it into perspective and I tell people, listen, we have to remember what faith is. And for me, what faith is like the sun coming up in the morning. Right? You don't question whether the sun is coming up. Nobody has ever questioned, well, I wonder if the sun is going to come up. Let me see if the sun's going to come up first before I go plant the harvest. You just know that the sun is coming up and you prepare for it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the key. You prepare because you know that the sun is coming up. So you get out, you harvest the field, you set your alarm, you wait for the sun to come up so you can start your day, whatever, right? Yeah. That is what faith is. And if we were to apply that faith, as you say, to every aspect in our life, the things that would come to us would change our lives,
Right. I think of faith too as kind of a bridge or a doorway. It's kind of like the idea that I pledge to remember something I know I already know, but I can't remember it at the moment. Like I know it's there, and I have faith that it is there. And of course, it's related a lot to trust too. Maybe trust is maybe a little more earthy, that I trust the flow. I trust what comes to me, that it is evolutionary, that there's something in it for me, that if I would engage with it, I'll learn something. I trust that other people are showing me who they really are right in the beginning. That people will often just tell you, no, don't ask me to do this, or, they'll show you who they are, which is how much love and fear they have in that moment. It's all there.
Though. We want the truth, but when the truth is given to us, we reject it if it has to do with us, though.
If it has to do with something we don't want to feel.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's what I meant on a more personal level. If it's somebody tells me, well, I argue too much or I'm a negative person, I'm not going to trust that. I'm going to denounce that. Mm-hmm. Unless I come to some consciousness.
So it's about receptivity, partly. So if somebody says you're argumentative, you could consider that and say, so what does that mean? They're experiencing me as argumentative. What am I doing? I'm defending myself in a certain way. I'm trying to keep something away from me by fighting. Do I really want to do that? What if I talk to them in a different tone of voice? What if I said to them, oh, I hear you first, and then made it into a conversation? There's so many ways you could take input from somebody that seems like a criticism and actually turn it around as a teaching. Mm-hmm. But you're teaching yourself.
This is a very important question for me as well. And I want to go back to where, you were talking about the dogmatic, views of religion. Do I have to be religious to be spiritual? Is it one and the same? Do I have to subscribe to some religion to feel the spirit?
No, I don't think so. And it may be a path for some people that they want it in a form world. Some people like to work with shamans. That's another form, of let's chant and do a ceremony and a ritual on you, and then I'll believe, my mind and body will believe it, and then I can say that it's real, and then it becomes real. But I think we do that for a while until we get to a point where the belief systems, where we realize that the belief systems and the dogma are in the way of a greater direct experience of something. And that's why every religion has mystics, that where they have total communion with the divine, or, or the saints, or whatever it is. They talk to spirit, and they're in spirit all the time, and there's no line around them. Every religion has that. But the spiritual movement today is, I think, akin a bit to physics and metaphysics. So if you look at how the world works with physics, and then you take that into the non-physical realm, you get metaphysics. How does consciousness and energy work? And then that's the inner energy blueprint of the science and physics in the physical world. And there are universal laws and principles and kind of mathematical patterns and things that are behind the way things drop into form. They're like guides for materialization, if you will, that we can understand these things. And I think if you're hungry for truth, like I was early on, I wanted to go straight into those laws. I wanted to understand, how does it all work? What are the principles, and how is consciousness and energy connected, and blah, 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 and I saw the religion as kind of a lower frequency explanation of those things that was a bit boring to me. But I was a minister in one of my last lives, so it wasn't boring to me then. Each to his own. Each, whatever you need.
Well, that's exactly it. And I explain to people, like, listen, if you want an example of how to live your life, you could pretty much subscribe to any religion and follow those rules, and you will have a loving, positive life. But religion, to me, takes away, again, what we were talking about before, the individualism of your spirit, because you're being told that you have to follow a certain path, and you may not subscribe to that path, but yet because of economical pressures or whatever land mass you live
cultural
on,
pressures,
mm-hmm. all of these things,
right?
It's almost like you're just wasting your life, in a sense, your spiritual life, because your soul isn't growing.
Right.
So for me, I saw that, and I just saw that religion opened me up to a bigger door. When I read mm-hmm. a story about Jesus, I always just saw Jesus as a human being like me, whoever this mm-hmm. figure was, and he just had a higher understanding and learning
Right.
of how life was supposed to be.
Right.
And this individual was going through life working at a higher home frequency, and we as lower frequency people did not understand the things that this man was doing, and we
That's
just
right.
wrote about him like he was God.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's true. And, and I remember when I was like 12 or 13, I started thinking, I didn't want to say the word God even. I wanted to, because I thought, why do religions have war against each other? And I didn't understand that. What's the core thing in all religions that we have in common? Why are we fighting over some dogma? Like, Christians and Muslims and Jews and blah, blah, blah,
to pray over a wall. Just to stand in front of a wall to pray, you've been killing people for thousands of years for the right to stand in front of a brick wall.
Right. Or whatever, to, not drink alcohol and wear a turban or wear this, or have a mat that you pray on,
and
or
I don't
go to church, or
anybody's religions or the beliefs, because the point of this is that people will die over this.
Right. And it's a pipeline, a guide, what do you call that? A rope that takes you and connects you to something higher. And we all need that. But if it gets so locked into my way is the right way and yours is not, and you have to be like me, well, then that's like ego and narcissism in a way. Narcissists always want the outer world to agree with the way they have reality set up, or else, you're fired, you're out of here, because we can't have you not agreeing with us. And when there's a lot of fear involved, you get, I think, an interpretation of religion or politics or anything. It goes to fundamental, lower vibration, where there's a lot of fear involved, and then the ideas get locked in. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, again, because it's a stair step. It's, we go into different levels of understanding, and then suddenly we go, oh, wait a minute, there's more. And then you go to the next step, all on your own. It just occurs to you one day, So everybody has their own pathway and their own timing and sequencing. And, that's part of life. It's natural flow. So I don't get why people have to make other people wrong,
Well, the way that my philosophy, Miss Penney, is I guess it's just a gumbo of all the religions and everything. But just for me, right, from what I take, speaking from a biblical stance, we're born into the flesh. We're born into sin. What does that mean? For me, that means ego is the sin. The worst, the most detriment, the most evil thing that we can do to ourselves is be so narcissistic as how you explained, because it stops all growth. It just stunts you. You just remain in an ignorant, blissful way. And so for me, as the Bible speaks about being born again, and I try to take the religion out of Jesus's message, and just think about it in a physical form, as in a realistic way, and for me, being born again is just coming into the consciousness that, I am an egotistical person, and I am a selfish person, which equates into childness and stunt of growth. And as you start to move into that spiritual thought process of giving, sharing, love, and just care for other than self, you become into being born again. And for me, it's like Jesus says, that once you're born again, you can't go back. Once you understand the spiritual realm, you can't go back into an ignorant, blissful state.
Right. Yeah, I think that born again is that where you wake up out of the idea that this is only a physical reality and I'm only a physical being and everything is based on separation and pain and suffering, into the idea that, and there's a non-physical reality too at the same time. I am a soul in a body. having a body. I'm not just this personality thing that dies and then will never, that's the end. No, I'm an eternal soul. I'm here having this Penney experience right now, and I'll have a whole bunch of other ones, whatever I want. And but when you wake up to the fact that you're really the spiritual being creating a physical world, that to me is born again. Right? You're powerful. Born into the understanding of spiritual life and not ignoring physical. It's always the inclusion of both, not either or. Right? Well, spirit is in matter,
yang, right? Isn't that the essence of the yin and the yang is just perfect harmonial balance of life?
Right. Well, and remember in that symbol, the white side has a black dot in it and the black side has a white dot in it. So they contain each other, but there is a bigger reality when they come together and merge, a greater reality. Same with the Star of David. You've got a Trinity in the heavens, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and body, mind, spirit down here on earth. The two coming together and merging into one thing is the idea. It's actually an experience. This world is the other world. The heavens in the earth. Aha, it's not separate after all. And many cultures have these kinds of ideas that are represented in symbols.
So how, Ms. Penney, I mean, how do you and I and a few of the other conscious individuals, how do we reach the masses? And because I'm scared. I'm scared of what I see around me. I'm scared of how people are thinking. Just this past election, just me seeing how people are processing what's going on around them scares me because it's ignorant. And I just don't understand how we can look at each other and because you're black and I'm white, I'm going to hate you. How because I don't agree with the things that you say, I'm going to slander and just create lies about you and how do we survive? How do we keep our home frequency in this, Ms. Penney?
Well, first it starts with each of us to not go into fear. So don't get afraid of that. Just watch it because it's a symptom of a clearing on the planet. It's a larger process underway.
It affects me. What's going on around me?
You've got to
the food that comes in my house. It affects the money in my pocket.
Yes. So you change your mindset so that it's not part of your personal reality. And then it may occur to you once you clear yourself that, well, I think I'll move, or I'm going to start this program to help the people, or I'm going to write books, or I'm going to do whatever I feel like is the right next thing to do. Work with kids, whatever it is. And then that will cause the next right thing to come in. Stay out of fear, let people have their reality, but build up the other reality of, consciousness and truth and higher energy, and invite people in if they're ready. And if they're not, let them be. They'll wake up on their own at a certain point. And that's all you can't rescue people. Unless they're ready to open up anyway. It's not something you can do.
How do you know, Ms. Penney, that my son who's 16 years old, and I'm just speaking hypothetically, but my son who's 16 years old, I'm a single mother, my husband's incarcerated, I'm trying to stand by him. My 16-year-old son doesn't stay in the house. I know he's a caring boy, but he just went sideways. How do I reach him?
Well, again, it always starts with you. Change any ideas of fear that you have and believe in that kid. In your mind, you see him receiving his full soul into his body. You just see him as being himself, his true self. And then you talk to him about that as often as you can. Give compliments, give feedback, have those real moments. Little things, I think, not lectures, right? Touch into the real place in people and set a good example yourself.
How important is it to visualize these things, like you say?
I think it is important because imagination is the real reality.
That's the truth.
It is.
That is
And
absolutely the truth. And I explain that, not to cut you off, because that is the essence of life. And how I explain that to people is everything that you see that is man-made, everything that you see around you came from one place. It came from thought. Right. It came from imagination. Mm-hmm. It came from creation. Everything that you see, touch, sit on.
That's right.
That's
why I say it's a lot easier to work in the inner energy blueprint, which is in the imaginal realm. If you want to change your reality, go change it there first. Imagine another reality. And I always think of it like a little bubble floating in your field, like a clear bubble. And inside that bubble is a little reality going on. And it's one where, your son is not going sideways and he's like suddenly got a mentor or something good happens to him. And then he gets the wake up call and he decides to do something else or whatever. And you in your mind, you go up to that bubble and you put your arms around it and you can see into it, but you're still on the outside. So you match your frequency to that bubble. And as soon as you match the same frequency, you pass through the wall and go into it. And then it becomes your reality, but you're still in your mind, but you're giving yourself a tactile experience. You're seeing it as a real, like a dream, like you're in a dream and you're going, oh, look, everybody's, helping. There's magical synchronicities happening here and people are laughing or whatever it is, and you give your body that sense of joy or relief. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I like that. I love this reality. And when you love the reality, it loves you back. That's what's so interesting. That as you keep your attention in the present moment on that reality and let yourself feel it, you can even revise it a little bit in your mind if you want. And let your body get, oh, this feels so good. The body is the one that will start materializing it, actually. You have to have a felt sense of a potential reality and stay with it and just love it. And pretty soon it'll start filtering in and the molecules of your physical world will rearrange and something will happen.
You're absolutely correct. And I'm testimony of that. And as I sit here, and as I've expressed a couple of times, what my current state of environment is, I could sit here and I could question and I could tell myself, like, I tried, why is this happening? I've done everything that I could, but again, I'm not being honest, and at the end of the day, what you're talking about, like, truth has to come first. Truth is the essence of what begins everything that we're talking about. So if you're still sitting around and you're still making excuses as to, why your son is going sideways, because you're blaming it on his father or you're blaming it on, the kids at school or who he's hanging around with, you're still not coming to what we're trying to enlighten you with, right? Like none of what we're talking about is going to come into existence for you. The positive side. It's going to work for you. Manifestation is going to work for you.
It'll be the way you think it is. That's the problem. And by changing your inner pattern, I mean, you can think about it, but actually you have to translate it into your feeling body so that your body actually gets it. That oh, I get it. I can feel how this could be. As soon as you do. I mean, then the universe takes care of the logistics. That's what everybody says. It's true. Suddenly somebody gives you an inheritance or, whatever, things come out of nowhere, or somebody says, oh, did you ever read that book? Blah, 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 and you get it, the next thing you need, and you get the roadway out.
And that's what I got from your book was the importance of feeling that. And not only just saying it in your mind, like, I'm going to be a superstar, and you just kind of write it off as you just wishing that you could be a superstar. but just imagining it in your mind, putting yourself on the court, say basketball, in the uniform, and you're picturing this in your mind to where your body kind of starts reacting to this imagination.
Right.
And this is how manifestation begins, right?
Right. But it also, that's a superficial goal. Why would you want to be a superstar in basketball? Well, if you were going into the experience of being like super great at playing, there would be an experience that you would have of such elegance and beauty and flow and joy that, boy, I shot that thing and it went right where I wanted it. And and everybody's coordinated on my team. And it's like, butter, melted butter, beautiful. And I love that feeling. And I love being an example for kids, or I love, so the true motivations of being like a superstar, there maybe one layer down, it's like, I want to get attention. Mm-hmm. I want people to like me. I want to have a lot of money because then I'm better than people, or whatever it is. But those are not real motivations. The deeper motivation always goes to spirit and to something that's based on joy and love and beauty, actually, too.
And I'm seeing that now. I saw that with Mike Tyson. I saw that with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Mm-hmm. Recently Kareem, he auctioned off all his trophies, all his materialistic gains. He auctioned off for his foundation, which is working with kids.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson's the same way. He takes his belts that he has and he'll flip them on the tables, and he says it's all junk. It means nothing. At once this stuff used to rule my life, but now it's just all junk.
Right.
And it's just us realizing like we've wasted so much time and energy and emotion into things that just come and go.
Right. Yeah. And that's another wake up, perfect. When you start to get that, you go, aha, right. Why did I really do all this?
Right. So my boyfriend will like me better, or my girlfriend will be more attractive to me, or, and that's it. And I'm thinking about these things where I'm at, and I'm like, the only reason why I bought that car and put those big rims on it was just to be more attractive to females. It would bring their attention over to, and it was just, right. And I'm thinking like, this is crazy. This is absolutely absurd that I'm spinning my life around other people's perceptions of me.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny to get all the external, like for men or women to get the external trappings of what you think the other sex wants, when really women want that kindness. They don't want the external stuff as much. I mean, yeah, sure, that's nice to not live in poverty or something, but if the person's not kind, why bother? If somebody's gonna beat you up or not champion you, why would you want to be together with somebody anyway?
Well, I can tell you, for me, like, one of my biggest problems is, you said it exactly right, is me thinking that I know what women like about me, and then me exploiting that to the women, right? Like, yes, I know that this is what you like about me, and it's just, oh, Miss Penny, I don't know. I really don't.
Right. Right.
It's like we just get so wound up and caught up in ego and emotions and mm-hmm. and then the point of all of this is we broadcast it down to our children. Our mm-hmm. children are being affected by this because right. they're in their most natural, purest state as a child, which is why Jesus said, if you harm one hair on a child, right, like, you might as well cast yourself into the darkest sea, with a
right,
millstone
right.
around you.
Right.
Because children are the purest form, in my opinion, of what the soul is really representing.
Well, they haven't gotten all the overlays on them yet. I remember I was playing with one of my nieces when she was about 4 or something, and we were laughing, and she looked at me suddenly and straight in the eyes. She said, Penny, are you an adult or are you a kid? I was like, there's something about, dogs and children really recognize authentic people, I think, and I think the most attractive thing is somebody who's just in the moment, real experience, real feedback, willing to look at anything. And it's so interesting too. It's not boring.
Right.
You know?
Well, life to me is the Jerry Springer of everything. You don't need anything else. All you have to do is sit on a park bench and just watch people all day,
right.
And you'll get all the excitement you're looking
right.
for. I promise you.
Except they're in the airport, they're all just looking at their cell phones. You know, I like to watch people, but nobody else is doing it anymore. It's just me.
There's nothing to watch anymore. It's just, you're just watching a statue
right.
of a person looking at a phone. And that's
right.
And this is another sad thing, and another awakening that we have to pay attention to, is the detriment of what technology is doing to us.
Right. You know? That's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other conversation. So, Miss Penney, I love you. I really do. You are a fantastic human being. You understand, in my opinion, how we have to live as human beings. This is why I wanted to have you on the show, to just get this message out to people, because you know, this is the way to live. You know, and if we all just are a little more self-conscious, instead of pointing to the fingers at other people, or trying to create laws to suppress other people so they don't affect my emotions, just spend a little bit of time of dealing with those emotions.
Right.
You know, and we'll be at a better place. I'm scared for my child. Mm-hmm. You know, I am.
Well, don't be.
I try not to be. In this conversation right here, Ms. Penney, really, it centralized me, because, again, you know, the turmoil can affect you so easily, and it can pull you off.
Yeah. That's it. We are in a period of, I call it the bridge time, you know, where we're partly clear, and then we're partly still adhering to the old programming. And then we have to remember, oops, there I go again, get recentered, reestablish your tuning fork, you know, and get back in alignment, and then act. And then you're going to get drawn off sides again. And then, oops, there I go, come back to the center. I mean, it's over and over and over again to stabilize and make the home frequency reality your new normal. And the more people who do that, the balance of power shifts on the planet, and it will almost like draw energy out of the those negative realities. It's like they won't be able to function because they won't make sense anymore. It's like people will start forgetting that what did I believe in? Wait, that, you know, and that will happen where some of this will just kind of fade out. Right now it's up because everything's super polarized at this time, because a lot of subconscious stuff is surfacing that was not able to be seen before. And it's crazy making, it's fear-based. You know, all the narcissism that's coming up in the world right now is all about fear.
That's true. And so to end on, how does the person, right, that their life is just in complete chaos and has no understanding of what this last 2 hours have been, but they want to change their lives, what are some of the baby steps? Just some of so they don't overwhelm themselves and then lose confidence. What are some of just the small things that they can do each day to start enlightening them to what we're discussing?
I think it has a lot to do with taking a little bit of time to be quiet. Because if you're in your left brain, the left brain is running a tape loop of all the negativity and all the negative declarative statements about yourself and about the other people and the world and blah, blah, blah. But if you will just stop the internal dialogue, I mean, pause, hit the pause button, get in the center, get in your body, feel your heart beating, feel your nerves tingling, close your eyes, block out the external reality, and just breathe. And every time your mind starts up, say, stop, pause. I hit the pause button and go into that. It's almost like a velvety, dark space that's really nurturing and absorbs all the negativity, and just sit there. I mean, I don't even call this meditation. It's just calming to allow everything to fade out so that what's left is you, the soul, consciousness. And then just be in that presence of whatever it is. It's a kind of consciousness. And don't call it anything, because then you're in your left brain again, naming things. Be in it, and you'll feel blank, and you'll feel like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing anything. Shut up. Get quiet again. Try it for 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes. And while you're in that state, notice your body calming down. Because you've got to start with a clear space in the very center of yourself in order to start expanding it. You don't try to fix the outside world. You fix the inside first and expand it out and include the outside world inside your clear, field. And then it will calm down too. If you think of projecting out to an outside world, you've already created separation and fear. So the baby step is get inside your body, be on the crosshairs of the here and now, stand right where you're standing, and be present.
And understanding that vibration can have effects on you and not to allow it to change you.
Right. Yeah, don't match lower vibrations. Notice what you're matching. And notice what you did that day.
Right. That's exactly right. And to put that into perspective for some people, what that means is just think about you being in a good mood, right? And you're going to a friend's funeral. It's not something that you're experiencing per se that would have you down. So you're in a good mood and you're just going to a funeral with a friend. When you walk into that funeral parlor, the overwhelming vibration is a low, depressing vibration, and you automatically start to adhere to that. You become, your vibration comes down.
And that's partly is you start thinking about what isn't. The person's gone. We don't have this. And then that reminds you of what you don't have. And then you go down and feel more depressed. You're pressed in, Yeah.
And then on the flip side, you may be down and your friends may come over to you and they'd be like, man, come on, we just got to go out and party and you'll feel better. And then you get into that high energy, high vibration environment and you automatically start to feel better.
Right. But then that's not really truly feeling better. It's a high like speed vibe. Go out into nature, like into a bunch of redwood trees or into a place where there's a spring or a waterfall or something like that, and sit there for a minute and feel the life around you and smell clean air and quiet down. That's high frequency energy. Remember, high frequency, it doesn't mean speedy. Actually, that gets you away from the clarity often. It'll change your energy level, but it's not really truly high energy.
I can tell you, for me, the most comforting experience in my life is complete silence. Complete silence. You can feel your ears relax. You can feel your brain just relax and your body just decompress like, oh my God, and I mean no noise, just complete silence, which is very hard to do these days,
Right.
So Ms. Penney, thank you so much. I would love to have you on anytime again to share these words. I know this has probably been a little different of an interview, and I hope
it's really fun and interesting.
I hope that it was okay for you. So I love these discussions. Please stay safe in these times.
I will.
And take care of yourself, okay?
Good deal. You too. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Penney.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.